Nice to nice to see such a big attendance at such an early hour. Uh, I will do my best to keep a coherent presentation, kind of early. Also, a lot of familiar faces, people I respect deeply. So I guess the stage fright is a little bit bigger because of that, even. So. What I'm going to talk today about is personal data, privacy, and ethics in a decentralized world. And it's the intent of this presentation is actually not to provide any answers. Hopefully, the result of this talk will be that you have more questions. Yeah, let's start. First, a little bit of a context. My name is Gregor. I'm one of the co-founders of DataFund project. DataFund is a protocol that guards personal data and provides safe storage and enables data exchange, personal data exchange. So information is shared on a need-to-know basis. And at the same time, we try to incentivize the sharing of anonymous data. During the talk, I will try to maybe also draw some parallels about the challenges that we face. So it's also considering the time frame, we will just glance over some topics because actually personal data, privacy, and ethics are topics that could deserve each of these topics could deserve its own conference. So, what is personal data? First, just a quick definition. Personal data we see as any kind of data that can reveal individuals' identity. And here we also need to take into account that sometimes we have anonymous data streams, but when those anonymous data streams are combined, they can lead to identity revelation, and in that sense, they also become, again, personal data. And why is personal data important? It's because we live in a data-driven society, and this data-driven society is fueled by personal data. Personal data actually is responsible for Brexit and Trump, among others. We wouldn't think about it on the first thought, but when we look at the behind, at what happened in backstage, how people were targeted with ads and messages that are designed to elicit emotional responses, and it's within the, let's say, personal data community, it's quite clear that those were the factors that moved the needle. So, so we have this is an example of one type of research. This researcher specifically who did this actually made a public complaint that his research was abused by a company called Cambridge Analytica, and Cambridge Analytica's biggest clients in 2016 were, yes, Brexit and Trump. And in this sense, hyper-targeted ads do change our beliefs and attitudes, and what is most important, without our awareness. And this is one of the keys I think that we need to recognize in today's time, that there's a lot of activities happening that we are actually not aware of because they're already so sophisticated. So in that sense, our online actions, without us noticing, reveal our personality profiles. And at the same time, what we need to consider is that our offline actions are actually influenced by online activities. And the person who knows your personality can actually devise systems, they can devise activities that influence you without you being aware. And here what we need to think about is actually, in the sense also, some research indicates that 50%, almost 50% of our daily decisions are decisions that we're not aware of. And this ranges from simple things like that we don't think which shoe we put on first to complex things like relationships. Sometimes we react in relationships and then later we ask ourselves, why did we do that? This is all basically the works of the brain. And it has to be like this, because this is actually what gives us human a competitive advantage against other species. But yes, the brain does not distinguish between bad and good habits. And personality modeling and insights, it's becoming a big business. It's actually, you can go online, you can do demos, you can try out. Already like a couple of years ago, IBM needed around 200 tweets to break down your personality in more than 40 traits. So your personality profile is out there. And you can also then imagine, what does this mean? IBM and other companies are offering this to the enterprise sector. You call customer support, and you know, with that customer support, it just makes click. And it's like, wow, they're so cool guys, I'm going to buy more. So this is one aspect. We're only going to touch on a couple of them. And the other very important aspect is that physical and virtual worlds have merged. And simple example would be how we can see today that, I don't know, a lot of people go to a concert not to listen to music, but to make a photo and to collect likes. So it's again, the virtual is influencing the physical and vice versa. And in this context, personal data is becoming the digital extension of us, the digital self. Therefore, a shared photo is actually a lot more than a photo. It's experts look from colors to composition to time when it was posted to the content. It's like a photo really tells more than 1,000 words. And now let's think about an Instagram stream. Let's think about all the other social media streams, all the likes, how much they reveal. And then if we combine this with personality modeling, it becomes a little bit worrisome. Another thing is we create these data streams. And we see a trend, just a question, how many of you have heard of the social credit system in China? Wow, that's why I like this crowd. So usually I'm the only one knowing this. And yeah, in summary, what's happening there is social credit score system in China is kind of like a credit score, just that it uses a lot more data sources. Drawing from social media, our online behavior in general, and so forth. And it's not just used for deciding if a person is entitled to a loan or not. It's what's at the moment the system is being tested, and there are only rewards. So if your behavior is aligned with the guidelines and directives of the Communist Party in China, then your score goes up. If it's not, it goes down. And it's going to be mandatory in 2020. And in 2020, China is also going to introduce punishments. So what does this mean? If your credit score is low, parents won't be able to send kids to the best schools, to the schools they want. You will have more, Chinese people will have more difficulties to get visa, to travel. Some of them won't be able to book better flights, and so forth. And it gets even crazier. It's like, if your friends have a low social score, then you get punished also. And now let's let this sink in, you know. So in that sense, it's not meant in a positive way, but it's actually a breakthrough. It's until now, usually the authorities, the governments, the kings, and so forth had like really obvious means of repression and controlling the society. You know, it's like, this guy, he's not cool, he's a traitor, we shoot him. Okay, it's like very obvious and not really pleasant for people to see. Here, what we have is your data streams are creating a gamified experience of coercion. And people actually like it. That's also the crazy thing. So maybe, yeah, today China, tomorrow the world. And in this sense, we, a data fund, we deeply believe that in the digital age, freedom actually starts with owning your data. And moreover, like I said before, it's about the digital extension of ourselves, so a little bit food for thought. Is the new spirit actually the data? So, therefore, I think it's quite obvious, and also considering the audience here, I don't think I need to make a big case why privacy matters. For me, it was important to highlight more. Usually, a lot of times there's a talk, I don't have anything to hide, what does NSA want from me, and so forth. And yeah, this is not, maybe for people, everyday people, this is not the main concern. In this sense, I really like the quote from Edward Snowden, who also says that people who usually say, I don't care about privacy because I don't have anything to hide, it's kind of the same as saying, I don't care about freedom of speech because I don't have anything to say. And again, I hope that the previous examples showed that it's not, in essence, it's not about hiding something that would be illegal. It's just being prudent and safeguarding things that shouldn't be exposing you to malicious actors. It's like we take care of our private keys, we lock the doors of our homes, but we actually leave our minds wide open. And in this sense, it's privacy is actually not just a technological challenge. We see great progress in cryptography, in new tools, in projects that are being presented here, but it's also, it's a social challenge. This is one thing that we noticed also during our work. When we started the project, we were like, yeah, privacy, everybody is going to be up for privacy and things like that. And no, people just don't care. They don't care because it's on one side, it really doesn't hurt us if we, it really doesn't hurt us if our data gets leaked, if it's copied and so on, and it's also very abstract, abstract theme. And if I come back to the point where I said like the physical and the virtual worlds have merged, so at the same time when we look at personal data and how it's being treated and managed, it's like a really big discrepancy of what's going on. So if I give like a metaphor, you know, like trying to, let's illustrate some online behavior in the physical world. Imagine you're on a romantic date. You speak, you're like engaged in a conversation, it goes well, and there comes like this one guy, and with Facebook written on the t-shirt, and without asking, sits next to you and says like, hey guys, just keep continuing with your date, do not mind me, I will make some notes, so I know later better what to sell to you. Well, you know, if that would happen in the real world, you would be like, whoa, hey dude, chill. So, there was, I also discussed this recently with a friend, and his argument was that maybe it's just this human element that makes it awkward. Maybe if there would be Alexa on the table, the couple would still have like a nice romantic dinner and everything. And yes, it's true, but at the same time, I think we need to look at it as more an illustration how also technology can sometimes hide important things, how technology can make us less aware that personal data matters. And it's actually that guy who would be writing down notes wouldn't take so many notes as Alexa. So in this sense, what we strive at Data Fund is to encourage that people start thinking about minimized sharing of personal data, share on the need-to-know basis, engage in a meaningful exchange, while at the same time, we shouldn't really be closed also in this paranoia. We should be proactive and think about how anonymous data can create big data sets that improve the quality of life, that make research faster, that enable things we couldn't imagine before. Now, in the sense about privacy, there's also one good news in Europe. It's an upcoming law called GDPR. I'm not really going to talk much about law. This is not definitely not my domain. But the important thing is individuals will need to give consents for any use of data. Companies or organizations in general risk of getting really high fines if they don't respect this. And at the same time, individuals will be able to demand export or deletion of their data. The law comes in effect in about 3 months. The importance for us here is that it changes the dynamic. It's like if you look this personal data stream or life cycle, it's kind of, from a game theoretic perspective, it's introducing a punishment, and this is changing some relations, and this is important for us. So, in this sense, I would just move to the last section. Here comes the ethics in play, and what do I mean with this? It's there are a lot of questions. We could have now here, for example, a debate. We could start with privacy, yes or no, and there would be arguments, good arguments, why there shouldn't be privacy. We could basically, both sides can have good points, and ethics, in this sense, it's something that fosters discussion, and in essence, it's about inventing good and bad. So, at its simplest, ethics is a system of moral principles. It affects people's decisions and how we lead our lives. Moreover, what is important, and I think this is important for us as Data Fund, for a wider ecosystem of developers and blockchain community in general, ethics can provide a moral map. What is meant by this? It's like usually ethical discussions are the ones that are really passionate. Because the moral dilemmas, you know, when we look at pro-life discussions or against and so forth. And when it's so heated discussions, when we see them and when emotions come in play, cognitive biases get stronger. It's like the rationality gets a little bit sidelined. And in that moment, a set of guidelines, ethical guidelines, can step in and say, look, this is your checklist. This is your reality check. Moreover, it's a structured approach. So in this sense, ethics can also pinpoint where the disagreement is. And this you can see also in everyday life. You know, when a Reddit discussion goes sour, it starts so promising, there's so much good talk, and then it just degrades. And this is because then, you know, some people come with totally something that's out of the scope, and then the others start arguing, we're not talking about that and stuff like that. So here come again ethics frameworks in place. What we need to do, what we need to be aware is ethics doesn't really give right answers. It's about discussion. And that's why I also said at the beginning that today I hope I facilitate more questions than answers. And sometimes it can also give several answers. For us, in the blockchain space, it's also important because it's like, how many of you have written a business plan in the past? So a couple. And yeah, it's kind of a tedious job, you know. It's like I haven't actually really met somebody who would come to me with an excitement, hey man, I'm working on a business plan. But what a business plan forces you is to think about aspects that you would neglect else. And the same is with ethics. It makes us think the uncomfortable things. And in this sense, it also helps us to maybe recognize what are possible unintended side effects. And again, I don't think I need to stress how important that is if you build unstoppable applications. So, in that sense, ethics is in essence a social consensus. So if we talk a lot about consensus on the tech level, I do think that with the dawn of new applications that include the social layer, we also need to define what's actually the social consensus, what's the world we want to build. Some issues that, and this list is by no means like a complete list, it's just, again, to foster discussion. So some issues that we see specifically with ethics on blockchain is incentives. How do incentives drive behavior? We also see a lot of times, in a sense, it's like, you know, today the world is getting tokenized. And maybe it would help if some of the projects would step back and actually think about, are we merging two things that should be merged or not? Matchmaking app that is incentivized with tokens can quickly turn you basically into a pimp. I mean, it's a very thin line. So I'm incentivized to really connect with many other people. And there are like a lot of other problems. For us, it was the question, in essence, creating a personal data marketplace. If you just go down the basic route, you know, you have the buy side, you have the sell side, you match. Is this really the way we want to go? And having such a market, does this expose an individual? Does this long-term create more damage to the individual than not? And these are important questions to think about. Then another question is like persistence of data. We are often asked like, do you save data on blockchain? No, we're not going to save data on blockchain. We're going to save it in a really awesome system called Swarm that Victor is presenting a little bit later. Then we are at the dawn of merging blockchain and AI. AI already has its own issues with ethics. So it's already big field, and this just increases the complexity. Then again, it's like if I deploy a smart contract, and that smart contract turns out to, even it was meant to don't be evil, that it becomes evil, who's responsible for that? So it's a lot of open questions. And because of that, as Data Fund, we've been facing this and talking about it as a team. But we feel, and we are very happy that there's already a lot of projects that feel the same, that this is something that needs a wider discussion. Because why? It's like, you know, if you do your own ethics, it's without talking, without hearing other people's views, without having the right diversity. What we're doing is just then incorporating our own biases into our internal ethics charter that actually just strengthens our own echo chamber. And we might think like, ooh, we are doing a good job, but our reality might be totally displaced. And moreover, it's this discussion should actually not just happen within the blockchain space, because also, you know, when you speak with the normies, you also become aware that blockchain space is an echo chamber of its own. So we should involve other parties as well. And for this reason, we are now in the process of announcing and creating, it's a working name, Ethics on Blockchain Initiative. It's open for all teams that are concerned about these questions. And we are going to also, we are in the talks with outside third-party experts, ethics experts, to engage with the blockchain community. And expect more news about this coming out later this month. And if anybody is interested, wants to talk more, please do look us up. We'll be here for the whole week. And we also have a booth and data fund, and just come there and let's talk more and let's invent something good. Thank you. Any questions? Well, I think it's a process. In essence, it's a process. Also, nobody. I believe nobody can now provide like 100% bulletproof solution, and that's why I also spoke before about the awareness. It's that part is happening. It started to happen a lot more faster with the revelations from Snowden. Every security breach, the cases of identity theft, the discussion now in the United States about interfering in the elections, all these events help with a bigger awareness. At the same time, this awareness also brings in awareness how already today our personal data is being used, how it's being monetized, and actually everybody's earning money on your data except you. So this element of, let's say, greed also in a kind of controlled setting, I think it's also going to be helpful.
TV series?
Sorry, I don't hear.
That there's a TV series, The Orville. Have you seen it? The Orville.
The Orville show.
Yes.
Yes.
Have you seen the episode that basically gives us a blink on what happens when China implements that social rating system?
No.
You should see it because everybody had that badge on them where they get up and down voted.
Must be one of the latest episodes.
Yeah, but
I will check it out.
When I saw that China thing, it was like, didn't they watch The Orville in China? Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good point. This is actually a really good point because things now are not happening in an obvious way. It's like also through TV shows, you know, we're getting more used. It's like just think about like a simple case. I don't know how many years it's now, like 7 or 10 years, when Google introduced Find My Friends feature. There was like this whole outrage how our privacy is being compromised, and basically they removed it, and a couple of years later they renamed it, and today it's kind of a good utility. And I think not necessarily saying that this is good or bad, it's just important that we are aware of these things.
Thank you for the talk, Gregor. You talked about ethics being a form of social consensus. And in the context of blockchain, I was just wondering, given that there are sort of a lot of different schools of thought around ethics, so whether that's utilitarianism or people who are maybe religious and have sort of a rule-based view on ethics, how do you, if a blockchain is going to bake the ethics into the protocol in some fixed fashion, how do you kind of represent the fluidity that humans approach ethics with?
Thank you, very good question. Maybe first, personally, I'm not an advocate that we include ethics on the blockchain, on the protocol level. So this is also, it's a very good discussion when we look at, before when I mentioned, okay, we have in blockchain, we have the consensus on the technical level, and if ethics is the consensus on the social level. So maybe this is actually a question of product design. It's a question of teams to think about what do their incentives do. It's a question of user experience. In our case, just, you know, it's like we want to enable individuals to store their data. But should we make it easy to share their EEG data or their DNA? Should there be also some UX safeguards? Because at the same time, I deeply believe, you know, it's like that the protocol itself needs to be neutral. And again, if ethics is a part, if you look at it as a social consensus, then some things within one network might not necessarily hold true for the other. But if we have like a set of guidelines, it's also easier for the community to have a look like and to evaluate it for themselves. To say it would be akin to maybe a summary of a political program and where you decide which party you're going to vote for on elections. So ethics, yes, definitely. It's a fluid process. It's maybe some things that we agree on today will change in the future and so. Yeah, very good. Ethics by design. Yeah, I agree. Here was a remark about ethics by design, and yes, this is a very important point, because what we also see often is, and I've been, for example, just yesterday before this talk here, I was checking like ethics charters from various big-time organizations that we engage every day, and it's more or less just fluffy talk, you know. So. It's not point of ethics just to bolt it on once you have it done and find somebody who would agree with you on all the points. It's about, from the beginning, before you write your first line of code, to have this awareness why you do certain things. I guess that's it. Thank you.